Greetings everyone. My name is Nabin Madhav, second semester training teacher at Sponsor Teachers Training College. And today I will be presenting the topic what is the memory level of teaching, discuss the characteristics of memory level of teaching, why is the memory level of teaching considering the lowest level of teaching. So let's start with the topic. And since we know that teaching happens at different level, memory level, understanding level and reflective level. So today's topic is memory level of teaching. And memory level is the most basic level of teaching. In teaching, students are expected only to recall, reproduce fact, information, formulas, definition, etc., without necessarily understanding them or applying them deeply. At this stage, only rote learning in place role. All and Harvard introduced this concept that he believes that in this beginning level, as children only memorize the basic information, and later this becomes the foundation for their learning. Since this memory level of teachings only focuses on rote learning from recall to reproduce of facts, build the basis for higher learning. For example, in physical science class, students are asked to memorize that Newton's laws of motion and Newton's three laws of motion exactly word by word. Even if the students cannot explain why and these laws are applied for understanding rocket motions or when buses suddenly stop, but still and they can give the statement of this law word to word. This happens because it doesn't answer it doesn't answer or understanding is not part of this level. It is a foundation level which prepares students for or understanding and higher level of learning. Next is characteristics of memory level of teaching. Memory level of teaching has certain distinct features which differentiate it from others level of teaching. First is recall and recall oriented. Recall oriented. The main aim of this level is to make sure that students remembers the fact. For example, in this level, students are often asked to memorize SI unit of mass, SI unit of mass, work, marks, work, temperature, power, etc. But in this, the student cannot solve numerical problems, but these units can be used in exam. Second is teacher centered. In this learning process, in this level of learning, teachers dominate the learning process. Students only listens and take notes or mostly repeat after the teachers. For example, teachers may write the laws of reflection on the blackboard and ask the students to simply repeat or remember the definition. Students simply memorize it for the exam. Is this level at this level of teaching, at the memory level of teaching, lower mental process. Um, so in this level of teaching, only memory and recognitions are used. Students do not analyze or questions. First is students may know that density equals to mass by volume, but he will not be able to explain that why iron sinks in water, but our wood floats on water. At this level of at this memory level of teaching, repetition and practice. Teacher often asks students to repeat after him at this level of teachings. For example, in chemistry class, students are often asked to memorize 20 elements in the periodic table, first 20 elements in the periodic table, and for multiple times to repeat it and recall it for later. Last is beginner friendly. This level of teaching is best suited for beginner learners. For example, class 6 students are asked to memorize the symbol of hydrogen, calcium, sodium, magnesium, etc. Because this creates the foundation for them, which will become the main source for or higher studies or later learning about the reactions, etc. Next is why it is considered the lowest level of teaching. Lowest level of teaching. Although memory level of teaching is useful at the foundation stage, it considered the lowest level of teaching because of the following reasons. First is lack of understanding. In this level, students often only remembers formulas and without real understanding of it. For example, students may memorize the formula that v equals to e plus at, but if they are asked that how acceleration affect the motion of a train, and they cannot explain because this is only limited to memory. This level of learning is only limited to memory. Second is no development of reasoning. At this stage, reasoning is not developed. At this level, students are maybe may know that force equals to mass time acceleration, but if they were asked why when a cricket ball or a tennis ball hit with the same bat, and why cricket ball moves goes further, they will not be explain the reason because reasoning is not developed at this level. Passive learning. Students receive at this level. Students remain the passive listener only. Only in classroom, students are and obtained and ask that the reflection is the bending of, for example, and the reflection is only the bending of light. And they ask to memorize it only and from the teacher, but they cannot explain the real life situation of reflection as they remain only the passive listener. Short term retention. At this memory level of teaching, in fact or knowledge often fades away after exam. For example, if the teacher asks one class to remember a whole periodic table for the exam, but few students, only few students will remember, but most of them will forget by the end of the year, because it was because this level of at this level of teaching, learning is not connected to with the practical understanding of the concept or topic, or here in case the periodic table. No scope of creativity is not engaged in this level of teaching. In students and if the students are asked to the definite asked for the Newton's law, uh, how they work how they work in rockets or aeroplane rockets motion, they cannot explain because at this level only they have memorized the Newton's law of motion and from the definition of books or from the teacher, but they haven't understand the concept behind the working of rockets and how Newton's law are working here. Next is foundational stage only. It is only a starting stage as of learning. Here only memorize here students memorize the fact for or futures use only, for future use only. Uh, Next is exam oriented. Here teaching is mainly memory level, because of because of uh, exam pressure. Students may memorize that force equals to mass time acceleration, but they cannot explain the uh, real life event working with force and acceleration relation, because they are only preparing for exam, and understanding of real life is hasn't taught in this level of teaching. In conclusion, can say that memory level of teaching is the foundation of the teaching learning process. It is used for beginners as it helps in recall and reproduction of the basic definitions. However, since it relies mainly on rote learning, it is considered the lowest level of teaching. It doesn't promote reasoning, creativity, real life application. And therefore, or while it is necessary as first level, and true education cannot be achieved by moving forward to only be achieved by moving forward to understanding and reflective levels. Why students develop deeper insight and critical thinking and the ability to apply knowledge in real life. Thank you.